In 1903, a ship from Italy sailed into Boston Harbor. On its deck stood a young man with bright eyes and a dream bigger than his suitcase. His name was Carlo Ponzi, but you'll come to know him as Charles. With just $2.50 in his pocket, he looked at the new world before him and whispered, "America, the land of opportunity." Charles came from a humble background in Italy. Life was tough, but his family was honest. He yearned to make them proud, to escape poverty and become a success story. But his early years in America were a struggle. He took any job he could find: dishwasher, waiter, clerk. He often went hungry, but he never lost his optimistic spirit. He kept telling himself, "Someday, I'll make it big. I just need one good idea." He had no clue that his one idea would make him both famous and infamous. Fast forward to 1919. Boston is buzzing with the energy of the roaring 20s. Charles is sitting in his small rented room when a letter arrives from a friend in Spain. Tucked inside is a curious piece of paper called an international reply coupon. His friend explained you could exchange it for postage stamps in another country. It was a simple tool for international mail, but in Ponzi's clever mind, it was a golden ticket. He started doing the math, his heart racing. Exchange rates, postage values, currency differences. The numbers danced in his head, all pointing to one thing: massive profits. What if I buy coupons cheap in Italy, he thought, and trade them in America for more valuable stamps? He jumped to his feet, shouting to the empty room, "I've found it. I've found the way to become rich." This wasn't just an idea. It was the birth of a legend. With his newfound discovery, Charles set out to convince the world. He promised investors something that sounded impossible: a 50% profit in just 45 days. He claimed it was completely safe, legal, and brilliant. At first, people were skeptical. It sounded too good to be true. But Charles had a magnetic charm and a way of speaking that made you believe every word. A few brave souls decided to take a chance, investing small amounts: $10 here, $50 there. And just as he promised, 45 days later, they got their money back, plus a 50% return. They were ecstatic. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, his small office on School Street was mobbed with people, all waving cash, begging to invest. "Mr. Ponzi, take my money," they shouted. Charles would smile and say, "My friends, you are all about to become rich." And for a while, it seemed like they were. By 1920, Charles Ponzi was a household name, the wizard of finance. He lived a life of luxury: the finest suits, a flashy car, and a grand mansion for his wife, Rosa. He was a celebrated public figure, donating to charities and even bailing out struggling banks. When reporters asked him for the secret to his success, he'd just wink and say, "Ah, gentlemen, that's my little secret." But behind that charming smile, a dangerous game was being played. The truth was, he wasn't making money from postal coupons anymore. The whole operation had become too big. To keep up the illusion of success, he started using the money from new investors to pay off the old ones. It was a flawless cycle of cash flow, a house of cards built on trust and greed. And it worked beautifully, until the day too many people wanted their money back at once. While Boston celebrated its new hero, one young journalist at the Boston Post was growing suspicious. His name was Richard Grozier. "How can Ponzi pay 50% profits every single month?" he asked his editor. "It's mathematically impossible," his editor simply replied. "Then prove it." Grozier launched a deep investigation. He contacted postal officials and checked the global circulation of international reply coupons. His findings were shocking. There weren't nearly enough coupons in the entire world to generate the kind of profits Ponzi was claiming. It was all a lie. When the newspaper published the story, the city erupted in panic. Angry crowds gathered outside Ponzi's office, demanding their life savings. The dream had turned into a nightmare. Inside, Charles sat quietly, his perfect white suit a stark contrast to the chaos outside. His wife Rosa stood beside him, her face pale. "Charlie," she whispered, "is it true?" He turned to her, his confident facade finally cracking. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said. "I just wanted to give people hope." Then came a loud knock on the door. Police officers entered, their badges gleaming. "Mr. Charles Ponzi," one of them said, "you're under arrest for fraud." Charles nodded calmly, as if he'd been expecting them. "Well, gentlemen," he sighed, "I suppose the show's over." As they led him away, flashbulbs lit up the street. A reporter shouted, "Smile, Mr. Ponzi." He looked straight at the camera, lifted his chin, and declared, "I gave them a dream. They just didn't know it was made of smoke." The trial was a spectacle. Charles Ponzi walked into the courtroom not as a criminal, but as a star, wearing a confident smile. The prosecutor laid out the facts. This man took millions from innocent people. He promised the impossible, but Ponzi interrupted, leaning forward with that familiar charm. "Impossible? I delivered what they wanted. They wanted miracles and I gave them one." The judge was unimpressed. The gavel struck. The sentence: 5 years in federal prison. Charles just bowed slightly, whispering, "5 years? Well, I've had longer holidays." In prison, the silk suits and fancy cars were gone, replaced by prison gray and a hard bed. But even there, he didn't lose his spirit. When a guard commented that he didn't act like a man who'd lost everything, Charles chuckled. "I didn't lose everything, my friend. I still have my story." Yet, in the quiet, lonely nights, he thought of the people who had trusted him: the baker, the widow, the old soldier. "I never wanted to hurt them," he'd murmur to himself. "I just wanted to win." After his release, his name was a curse. No one would hire him. His wife, Rosa, tried to stand by him, but the shadow of his past was too large. One day, she left him a note: "I will always love you, Charlie, but I can't live inside your story anymore." He was eventually deported back to Italy, returning not as a hero, but as a cautionary tale. He tried to start new ventures, but his reputation preceded him. He ended his years in Brazil broke and forgotten, telling his grand stories to sailors who thought he was just a crazy old man. In 1949, in a charity hospital in Rio de Janeiro, Charles Ponzi took his final breath. A young nurse was by his side. "Do you know," he whispered weakly, "once upon a time, I had people lining up to give me money?" She smiled, thinking it was a fairy tale. "Yes," he chuckled, "and every fairy tale has an ending." His last words were, "Tell them, I didn't steal dreams. I only borrowed them." After his death, his name lived on, but not as he intended. A Ponzi scheme became the term for any fraudulent investment that pays old investors with new investors' money. He started with a clever idea and a desperate dream. He gave people hope, and in return, they gave him everything. But the dream was too good to be true. It always is. And somewhere, if ghosts can laugh, perhaps Charles Ponzi is still smiling, forever, the charming storyteller who made the world believe in magic, even if it was made of smoke. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories from history. See you next time.